Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Steven Mercer. I'm an independent educational consultant helping students and families apply to college, and I'm also an instructor with the University of California, San Diego Extension College Counseling Certificate Program. So today I'm here to talk to families and parents of students applying to college to give some advice on ways to support students. Parents play an important role in this process. But as I mentioned in a previous video on some other ways that you can help support, it's important to find the fine line between support and taking over. And it's important to recognize that for students applying to college, whether they're coming directly from high school or from a community college, that the process of applying to college itself, from the very beginning stages, is part of the educational process. So my hope is that students have family members who are there to support and let them lead. To that end, I want to talk about a few things that family members should avoid and should not do when thinking about how they might support their student when applying to college. These are some things to avoid. One is obvious, but it's worth mentioning, and that is family members of any sort should never write the college application essay, should never fill out the application for the student, should never contact a college as though they are the student. This may be obvious because it's really just unethical. But here's the thing I know as a former admission officer and as someone who has talked with admission officers over the years quite a bit. I happen to know that admission officers are pretty smart. And the bottom line is when students have essays that are not written by the student itself, or when parents get too involved in filling out the application for the student, the truth is college admission officers know. Now, how do they know? Well, they don't know for sure, but there are signs and there are signals in an essay, there are words, there are turns of phrase that people use in a college application that often signal to an admission office that this was not something that filled out by a high school or community college student. And if that happens, if the college admission office has even a doubt as to whether or not the essay or the application itself was authored by the student 100%, there's no turning back. That application is likely going to face a very hard time of being successful. So it's both unethical, it sends the wrong message to your student, and also it can backfire at the end of the day. So I encourage folks never, never, never fill out applications and never write essays. Another thing to avoid for families who have a student living at home who are applying to college is to avoid constantly talking about the college admission process. There's one thing I know about adolescents is that sometimes they feel that their parents bombard them with questions every day, and they're overdoing the questions. I find that students come home from school and they have a parent member every day asking them, is your application done? Where have you got accepted? Have you been submitted? What have you heard about colleges? This really kind of eats away at students, and it makes it more difficult to have open and honest conversation. So a solution to this is to schedule a time, perhaps weekly, and make it a short period of time, maybe 10, 15 minutes at home every weekday evening on a Monday, for example, and have that be college application time. And what I say to students and families that do this is during that scheduled time as a family, all questions are on the table. Family members, parents, you can ask anything you want. You can ask to see the essays. You can ask to see the applications. You can really get clear and, in a way, demand the answers, right? But outside of that 10 to 15 minutes, it's out of bounds. Let the week go by. Let the student focus on getting their work done in school and be social in their activities. But save your questions for that short period of time. And it lets the student know that they're not going to be bombarded. They're not going to be hijacked. They're not going to get caught unaware with questions that put them in a tough spot. And yet they'll also be prepared for that scheduled time and be ready to answer their questions. It's a nice way to give it some structure and also make everyone feel comfortable. Another thing to avoid in the process is to avoid referring to the college application process as we are applying, or we are taking the SAT, or we got accepted. Avoid using the word we. The reason for this is that the student needs to lead this process. The truth is you may be helping, and I hope you are, but you, the family member, the parent, you are not applying to college. By saying we are applying, that starts to suggest that the student is not in control. They are not in the driver's seat. And to the extent that the student can be, they should be. So please let the student lead. And by just a simple change of language, by not using the word that we are doing these things, it starts to bring the focus appropriately on the student. The final thing to avoid that I suggest is family members should avoid assigning judgments to college choices that the student has made. And so what I mean by that is don't outright say, this is a bad college and this is a good college. The reason I'm suggesting that is too often when people assign that label to a college, what they're actually referring to is a very limited judgment. It has some merit, but it's very limited. And that is, in my experience, that means it's not a prestigious college, right? And that alone should not be the measure of whether a college is a good college for a student to apply to. Rather, the focus should be, is this a good college for the student, or is this not such a good college for the student? And as a family member, you know your student better than anyone, and you can provide good insight into the choices that they might be considering. If you have a judgment of a college and you think it's not a good college for them, say why you think it's not a good college for them. But outright judging a college and just saying it's bad or good, only based on prestige, and not bringing it down to a specific reason why you think for your student, maybe they don't have a particular major, or maybe it's a certain type of social environment that you know your student doesn't thrive in. They might want something a little bit quieter or a little bit bigger. And if you know something about them and their college choice doesn't fit it, then that's something to speak up about specifically rather than a blanket judgment, which takes the focus away from finding a good fit for that individual student. So those are my simple suggestions for things to avoid in helping your student apply to college. I hope this was helpful. Bye now.